My name is Karen C., and I'm the Superintendent's Director of Federal Programs. Today's webinar has actually been expanded to include 2 additional presentations after the information I'm sharing on the new Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. Following me will be Julie Oberle. She'll provide an important side-by-side comparison of fiscal year 2022 superintendent's budget request and the governor's recommendation as outlined in his Monday State of the State address. Following Julie will be Lisa Colon Durham, who will provide an advanced professional endorsement update. You will hear a lot of information this morning and will no doubt have questions. Please, for my presentation, submit your questions in the chat box, and I have Alexandra McCann and Michelle Taylor who will be reviewing those questions and answer questions that we do have a response for. Your other questions will inform the next webinar we conduct. This webinar will be recorded, and let's go ahead and get started.
Hi.
The purpose of this webinar is to provide an overview of what we know so far about the 2 K-12 funds under the new Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2021, or which we are calling CRSA. I know that is a mouthful, but words are important. CRSA includes support for public education and non-public schools. This is a big picture overview. If you are like me and prefer to go to the primary source to see information, you can use that link on the slide, and that will take you to the 5,500-page document of the Consolidated Appropriations Act. The Omnibus Appropriations includes a small increase in Title I, Title II, Title III, and IDEA. We won't know what that looks like until we receive state level and LEA level preliminary allocations. The Consolidated Appropriation Act, which includes CRSA, was signed into law on December 27th, 2020. This slide here applies to everyone on the call. Under CRSA, the performance period for the coronavirus relief funds under the CARES Act was extended. The performance period for Idaho's funds is extended to June 30th, 2021, and applies to the 4 funds you see on the screen: special allocation, distance blended learning, technology, and non-ESSER. You may have heard previously of a performance period extension ending December 31st, 2021, but DFM wants to close these funds June 30th. The GRA will be changed to reflect the June 30th, 2021 performance end date. The good news is that the money that was reverted back to the governor's office from the special allocation fund only will be added back to your GRA. I think this affects about 5 LEAs. This is a federal level snapshot of COVID relief for education. You will notice that under the current CRSA Act, K-12 education is receiving $54.3 billion, which represents more than 4 times what states received under the CARES Act. Under ESSER 1, $13.23 billion was distributed to states, and under ESSER 2, $54.3 billion will be distributed to states. Let's take a look at what this might mean for Idaho. Idaho K-12 education is receiving more than $215 million for relief related to the pandemic. This relief is both for public schools and for non-public schools. And that's the purpose of this webinar today. Let's look first at the ESSER 2 funds. for K-12 public education. Similar to ESSER 1, the purpose of ESSER 2 is to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. Idaho's ESSER 2 allocation is almost $196 million. Again, this is more than 4 times the ESSER 1 allocation that Idaho received last April. 90% of this flows directly to LEAs who received a Title I allocation this year. For ESSER 2, each LEA will receive its proportional share of its 2020-2021 Title I allocation. ESSER 1 was calculated in the exact same manner based on last year's Title I allocation. Now, there are 17 LEAs that did not receive a Title I allocation this year. And this means these LEAs are not receiving ESSER funds. Superintendent Ibarra is aware of this, and it is very important to her that all LEAs receive as much coronavirus relief as possible. So she will be working with the state board to identify potential options for these 17 LEAs. In addition to the flow-through amount, Idaho will, part of that 196 million is 19.5 million available at the state level for set-asides related to emergency needs as determined by the state board, of which of course Superintendent Ibarra is a member. This may be the bucket that provides funding to those 17 LEAs. There will definitely be more information about this soon, and as soon as we have that information to share, we will. So when will ESSER 2 funds be available? Unfortunately, the timing is not such that they are immediately available. As you know, JFAC provides spending authority for state budgets. ESSER 2 is not part of the original JFAC budget, but will be part of a February supplemental. After we receive spending authority for these funds, hopefully sometime in February, Alexandra will set up the GRA for individual LEA allocations. The U.S. Department of Education and the state expect that ESSER 1 funds will be drawn down first. Now, statewide, only 18% of ESSER 1 funds have been drawn down as of this week. So for most LEAs, it should not be a problem that the ESSER 2 funds are not immediately available. ESSER 2 funds will be added to the GRA as each LEA's ESSER 1 funds have been exhausted. Three additional uses of funds have been added to both ESSER 1 and ESSER 2. The 3 additional allowable activities are related to addressing learning loss, school facility repairs and improvements to reduce the risk of transmitting the virus, inspection, testing, maintenance, repair, replacement, and upgrade projects to improve the air quality. You will find an updated uses of fund document on the link provided on the screen. Okay, this is very important. It's important to know that ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funds must be tracked separately. We have a couple of options to consider in identifying how your LEA will track ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funds separately. Using different fund numbers for ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 is one option. 252 fund number has already been assigned to ESSER 1. If you choose to use a different fund number for ESSER 2, please make sure that that fund number you use is somewhere between 271 and 289, and that it is not otherwise assigned to any other fund. I believe Kuna School District will be tracking their ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funds in this manner. Another idea for tracking ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 expenditures separately is to add a detail number to your fund number. Some LEAs are already using the fund detail level to track the different buckets within ESSER. This is a common practice for many LEAs and is another good option. I believe Payette School District will be using this option to track the different ESSER 1 funds and the ESSER 2 funds. However your LEA decides to track expenditures, the most important thing to remember is they must be tracked separately. You'll notice that the revenue code for both ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 remains 445900. Equitable services to non-public schools is not required under ESSER 2 or GEAR 2. We'll talk more about GEAR in a minute. Through another program under GEAR, which we'll talk about next, a separate program called Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools, or EANS, allows eligible non-public schools to apply to the SEA to receive services or assistance related to the pandemic. To learn about the Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools, we moved to the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, and this is where EANS lives. As part of the application the Governor submits to the U.S. Department of Education, he designates the SEA to administer the emergency assistance to non-public schools. These are not equitable services, but rather the emergency assistance to non-public schools must be related to educational disruptions caused by the pandemic. The SEA has 5 requirements related to providing assistance to non-public schools. And that includes distributing information to the non-public schools, developing an application for them, processing the application, providing services or assistance to the non-public schools, and managing the funds to ensure that all funds are obligated within 6 months so that unobligated funds can be reallocated back to the Governor's office. Just like equitable services, no funds go directly to the non-public school. In essence, the SEA conducts the consultation with the non-public schools to determine eligibility and services and assistance needed related to the pandemic. This is important information for LEAs for 2 reasons. 1, you may receive questions from the non-public schools in your district. And 2, the LEA as a public agency may play a role in administering these funds, services, assistance, materials, equipment, and property to the non-public schools. All property purchased with these funds will revert back to the public agency administering the funds. There's a webinar this afternoon where several of us from the SDE will learn more about the separate Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools program. After we have more information, we will provide another webinar. This is a comparison chart of ESSER 1 and ESSER 2. Notice that ESSER 1 is part of the CARES Act and ESSER 2 is part of the CSRSA Act. All right, let's just quickly review these. The performance period for ESSER 1 remains March 13th to September 30th, 2022. The performance period for ESSER 2 is extended a year beyond that. It still starts for expenditures beginning March 13th, and then it goes to September 30th, 2023. The use of the funds for both is exactly the same. Equitable services are required under ESSER 1 in the same manner as Title 1A, Section 1117. Equitable services are not required under ESSER 2 because there's a separate emergency assistance for the eligible non-public schools. The reporting is a little bit different also. Under ESSER 1, most of the reporting that we provide to the U.S. Department of Ed comes from the FATA report, although the U.S. Department of Ed has requested a little bit of additional data for ESSER 1. ESSER 2 reporting requirements include everything required of ESSER 1 and an additional detailed accounting of the uses of ESSER 2 funds, including measuring and addressing learning loss. So we are talking through how we might collect these data from LEAs, and that might end up being something like the annual performance report that is required for Title I, but there will be more information in the future on that. ESSER 1 funds and ESSER 2 funds are tracked separately. The revenue code for both is 445900. The fund number for ESSER 1 is 252. And the fund number for ESSER 2 can be any unassigned number between 271 and 289. Please visit our SDE website. From the homepage menu link, click on Federal Programs and then click on CRRSA, C-R-R-S-S-A Act. And we have started to put information on that page. So far, we have the LEA allocation list, and we have the revised uses of fund list. In closing, I want to recognize how confusing all of these different grants can be. Here at the SDE, Alexandra and I and others live and breathe this every day, but for those of you who have so much on your plate, this can be very confusing. Never hesitate asking questions, and personally email works best for me, but never hesitate asking questions of any of us, and we will respond to you as soon as we can. And with that, that ends my presentation, and I am going to hand the baton over to Julie, who will be providing you with some very important information.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Julie Overley, and I work in school finance at the State Department of Education. And I think I probably know many of the business managers that are on this webinar today. When I was offered a few minutes today to share the governor's fiscal year 2022 budget recommendations, I thought that was a great opportunity. When I started putting my talking points together, I realized I probably could have done the whole hour with just information I want to share with you. So my apologies right now for the speed that I'll be going through this information, but I do think it's very, very important. The document on your screen right now shows a side-by-side comparison of the fiscal year 2022 request made by the superintendent. And remember, this was initially done August 28th, and it was updated slightly in October. And that's in the green column. The blue column shows the governor's fiscal year 2022 recommendation that he shared with everybody during his State of the State address on Monday. This document was emailed to you, or a link to this document was emailed to you in the weekly newsletter sent by the department that you should have received Monday evening. Please note that all the numbers I'll be talking about today exclude those for the Idaho Educational Services for the Deaf and the Blind, which is technically part of the public schools appropriation. You can see that there are only a few differences between what the governor recommended and the superintendent requested. Also included in the weekly email to this that was sent out on Monday evening was a link to a side-by-side comparison of what those differences are. And that's what you're seeing on the screen now. Overall, the governor recommended $24.1 million more in general funds than what was included in the superintendent's request. Most of that was for additional dollars to allow for career ladder movement in both fiscal year 2021 and 2022. by allowing in his current recommendation for fiscal year 2021, career ladder movement in 2021 that raises the base amount for 2022. And so that's what the $19.4 million in career ladder salaries is for, and the $3.8 million that you see for career ladder benefits. And at the time that we prepared the budget and the superintendent finalized her numbers, we were under the understanding that there would be no movement on the career ladder for fiscal year 2021. So you can also see that there is just over a $1 million difference for salary apportionment. This is for administrative and classified staff, because the governor is recommending a 2% base salary increase for administrative staff for fiscal year 2022, whereas the superintendent had recommended a 1% increase. Both the superintendent and the governor recommended a 2% classified base salary increase for fiscal year 2022. The remaining differences are very, very small and are due to more updated information from the bond elections that were held in November, and a change in the statutory formula, or in the numbers that drive the statutory formula for the Idaho Digital Learning Academy. I'm going to switch now to fiscal year 2021. When I just told you, I let the cat out of the bag early, that the governor is recommending that there be movement on the career ladder for fiscal year 2021. If you can think back to May, when the governor announced his 5% holdback, it included several items to total up to the $98.7 million. He froze movement on the career ladder and suspended the 2% base salary increases for administrative and classified staff. Leadership premiums were suspended, and there were reduced funds made available for professional development, IT staffing, classroom technology, content and curriculum, and for central services. In addition, to get to the total of the $98.7 million, $21.1 million was also reduced from the discretionary funds. Several of these recommended reductions that the governor recommended, that the State Board of Examiners approved on July 21st, require legislative action. Those include the freezing of the career ladder, the suspension of the base salary increases, and the suspension of the leadership premiums, which when combined equal about $51.1 million. On Monday, the governor modified how that $98.7 million in reductions should be made, which are reflected in the first blue column on the worksheet. The governor is now recommending that there be movement on the career ladder for fiscal year 2021, and that the base salary increases happen, and that leadership premiums be distributed. So you can see that we have gone through, well, the governor actually in the blue columns went through and estimated, or put those on the line items, I'm sorry. So you can see that there's about $4.3 million in salary-based apportionment for administrators and classified, all the way down to the $19.3 million. To make this revenue neutral, what he has done is he is reducing discretionary funds by the $51.1 million. So you can see that would reduce the discretionary funds available by the $51 million. The governor is also recommending a shift to full-time equivalent enrollment-based support units for fiscal year 2021. And you can see the impact of that in column 2. At the time the governor was preparing his recommendations, he estimated that the shift to full-time equivalent enrollment support units over what had already been appropriated could be as high as $34.1 million. We now believe that cost to be closer to $18.3 million, and we are working with the governor's staff and legislative services to revise his original estimate using the enrollment data that you have submitted to us. And a big kudos to everybody. Thank you so much for getting us your IC information. There was a world of difference between the data we received in October and in November. So as part of the governor funding the shift to full-time equivalent enrollment, his goal is to make that revenue neutral. So you can see the allocations, the $34.1 million has been taken out of discretionary money. So we continue to have revenues of about $2.2 billion appropriated for fiscal year 2021. It's just, he's changing how those dollars are going to flow to you. And it's very, very different from what was originally appropriated for 2021 a year ago. I can't believe it's only been a year since that has happened. And you can see those numbers in the pink column. The next worksheet I am going to talk to you about shows the cumulative effect of the governor's holdback and the current recommendations on net state funding. So we have two columns. The first column in blue shows his original estimate, and it starts with the original fiscal year 2021 appropriation for net state funding of $457 million, and then the $21 million reduction that was recommended by the governor through his task force and approved by the State Board of Examiners in July. That reduced the distribution factor from $28,887 to $27,556. Then we have the next section that shows, just a minute, sorry. Okay, thank you. My screen wasn't keeping up with me. So then we have the section that shows the effect of the $51 million reduction to allow for current year movement on the career ladder and for the 2% base salary increases for admin and classified staff and the payment of leadership premiums. So that would drop net state funding to $384 million and a distribution factor of $24,329. But wait, there's more. As the commercials say, now we have to adjust the discretionary money for the $34.1 million that the governor originally estimated it would cost to shift to full-time equivalent enrollment. That will reduce the distribution factor to $21,730. And I'm going to point out that you can see we are using a revised distribution or support unit number in column B of 16,143. This has now been amended due to a funding cap for charter schools to the 16,074 that we'll talk about in column F. So you can see that while the original distribution factor was 28,867, based on the governor's recommendation, that will drop to $21,730. So now let's go through these numbers using what we believe the current estimate to be, which is about $18.3 million. And we came up with that amount by simply going back and redoing the budget worksheets. If we had revised support units of 16,074, what would it cost to switch to full-time equivalent enrollment over what's already been appropriated? So now in the column with the gray heading, you can see that by working through those numbers, we will end with a net state funding estimate of about $366.6 million and a distribution factor of $22,810. And I want to stress that no action has been taken by the legislature to implement the governor's recommendations. I think we can all agree that it has just been beyond crazy for fiscal year 2021. And we don't know what the final number is going to be. We are working with the governor's office. We are working with legislative services office, the legislative services office, who works with JFAC, who will have to make these supplemental appropriations. So when you see a supplemental appropriation for public schools at $51.1 million, my guess is that they would, assuming they hear this legislation or this proposal from the governor, is that they will make it revenue neutral by reducing the funds from discretionary. Ditto for the $34 million per the governor, $18.3 million per us. We will keep you posted. Please continue to read the weekly newsletters sent out by the State Department of Education. And then we'll, of course, I'll send emails as needed to schools. I just wanted you to be aware of what could be coming down the pike on this. When I make the February 15th payment, which is going to come to you on February 12th this year, I'm going to use what is in law at the time I make that payment. And we have notified legislative services to let them know that we're going to finalize the numbers in early February, and that any proposed action that they take would be really helpful if it happens sooner rather than later. Could they make changes? Yes, before the February 15th payment. Could they make changes after the February 15th payment is calculated and make those changes retroactive? Yes. So again, just stay tuned. I wanted you to be aware of these numbers. And as always, please know that you can reach out to me or anybody in school finance through phone calls or emails at any time, and we will do our absolute best to answer your questions as accurately as we can with the information that we have. So because the governor has recommended there be movement on the career ladder for this year, we've asked our certification director, Lisa Cologne-Durham, to spend a few minutes now talking to you about the advanced professional run.
Thanks, Julie. Just as you know, I'm Lisa Cologne-Durham. I'm the Director of Certification and Professional Standards for Superintendent Ybarra. I am just going to be pretty brief. As you now, I think you know why Karen announced why I'm going to come and talk to you a little bit about the advanced professional endorsement, and that is because the advanced professional endorsement is required in order for individuals to be placed on the advanced professional rung. And as Julie indicated, we are going to be looking at what the current law is, and so we're going to need to come up with a way in order to do that. So it will not be included in the the February 15th payment because there is data that we need to get. So what we're hoping for is that the May 15th payment will include movement to the advanced professional rung. While we have most of the data necessary to move staff to the advanced professional rung, school districts and charter schools still need to submit recommendations for the advanced professional endorsement as required by Idaho Code 331201A. While typically we receive recommendations through the CLDS system, that's the Career Ladder Data Submission System, at the end of each school year, we did not want to wait until the end of this school year to do that. So we developed a quicker process to be used for this fiscal year so that we can include the advanced professional rung placement in the May 15th payment. Before I share the actual process that we've come up with, I wanted to take a moment to show you where you can find guidance on the requirements. On your screen, you should see the certification homepage that's at the State Department of Education. On that homepage, on the left-hand side under highlights, there is the professional and advanced professional endorsement guidance. When you open that up or click on it and you open that up, it's 3 pages. The first page is probably something you're already used to, and that is the guidance for professional endorsement. That's the one that's been around for the last 5 years. On the second page it is the requirements for the advanced professional endorsement. Now, it still includes the asterisk about that we were not issuing them, as I haven't had a time yet to update this to include that there is no career ladder freeze. I think, as Julie said, we're still kind of working in limbo a little bit, but we're going to make sure that we are giving you what is currently in law. And so I will be updating this, but the requirements are still going to be the same. As I said, we do have the career ladder data submission includes all of those requirements that you already see on this page, except for one, and that is the local education agency recommendation. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to use the data that is currently in the career ladder data submission to develop a list of all instructional and pupil service staff who have met all of the criteria that's on this page, except for the recommendation. I will personally email every superintendent, charter administrator, and business manager to include a spreadsheet that lists your currently employed instructional and pupil service staff who have met all of the criteria that's on this page, except for the recommendation. Here's what I need from you. What I will need is for you to review that actual spreadsheet and make a determination on who you will recommend for the advanced professional endorsement and who you will not recommend. There's going to be a column in that spreadsheet where you can enter a yes or a no. That's pretty much it. You'll need to enter a yes or a no. And then after you do that, you will email that back to me. Please note that you can develop your own criteria for recommendation just as much as you can have developed your own criteria for the professional endorsement recommendation. We are hoping to get, or we are going to need those spreadsheets back to us no later than February 26th. That will allow us time to issue the advanced professional endorsements and then make all of those wrong placements. That will give us time to help with the May 15th payment. Please know that I'm going to be sending out an email with directions. This is just our initial piece to kind of give you a heads up that this is what we're going to be doing. We really tried to see if there was a process that we could get this as quick as possible, but without the least amount of requirements for our districts and charter schools to provide. I did see a question come up. I am hoping to get those spreadsheets out to you within the next couple of weeks. As you can imagine, I need to get the data, separate it, make an email for each and every one. I will do this as quickly as possible. Again, my goal is within the next 2 weeks to get these lists out to you. Other than that, I don't think I have any other questions in reference to advanced professional endorsement. Again, I will definitely be able to add those, get that information out to you. And then please email me any questions. I'm sure we'll have lots of questions and conversations about this. We'll work through it. As Julie said, Julie and I work together with Brand Win to make sure that we get all those placements done. And I'm more than happy to have just conversations where we can even work through your list, or if you think there are any mistakes or things that we need to work through, we can definitely do that.
Okay, so I believe we have a few minutes for questions. If somebody wants to read those off. Michelle Pereira or Michelle Taylor or Alexandra?
This is Michelle Taylor. I'm happy to read them. So most of you probably saw one of the first questions was if the slides would be available in the webinar. And yes, Carlin is going to be posting them for us. We have a question. Please discuss supplanting with the SRSA Act.
Okay, thank you, Michelle, for that question. Supplement, not supplant, is not a requirement under either ESSER 1 or ESSER 2. So there is no supplement, not supplant requirement.
Okay, this is going back to the SRSA funds as well. Focus of these funds should be on learning loss of students. I know you are learning more, but what should we do to focus on things that help mediate learning loss?
Addressing learning loss is one of the activities under the use of funds. And this, this topic is new to us, so we will be thinking about that and what that might look like, and then providing more information.
Okay, great. The next questions, it looks like, are mostly related to Julie and to some extent what Lisa is saying. So this one, does this mean we are paying our staff with admin degrees for their leadership premium by the end of this fiscal year?
So this is Julie. Please reach out to Branwyn Phillips with any staffing questions that you might have, and then he will work with our she will work with our certification staff as needed to get the questions answered. Branwyn's email can be found on the school finance website, or you can email me the question and I would be happy to forward it on.
All right, next. So are we redoing contracts this year, renegotiating and paying this year?
I would not do anything until there is legislative action. Right now, everything is just proposed. And then I am not familiar with how contracts are done at the districts and charter schools. I would work with your legal representation on that.
Perfect. Next one. So does this mean our discretionary funding is being reduced and we are now required to shift that money to move folks on the ladder? Sorry, just trying to wrap my mind around this. Brady, I hear you on that one.
Yeah, we're all nodding here as well. Should the governor's recommendations be approved or recommended by the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee, should it go through both the House and the Senate and be signed into law by the governor, there will be movement on the career ladder for funding purposes for fiscal year 2021. And those dollars will come to you. We are currently working with the programmer right now. Our hope is that he'll be able to flip a switch once this goes into law, and that we will be able to use this data for the February 15th payment.
Okay. Hi, Lisa. State Statute 33-1201A, Idaho Code, provides the opportunity for instructional staff and pupil services staff to provide additional evidence in exceptional cases in the event required standards for the advanced professional endorsement are not met. Mm-hmm. What will be the process for this to take place?
So just like that is the same process that is defined in professional endorsement. That would be up to the school district to make that determination. They would have to put a packet together of the evidence that they're using instead of, and then share that information with us. In fact, I have not yet seen one yet for the professional endorsement, but if they did not meet the advanced professional endorsement or professional endorsement and you guys are using other criteria, then that would need to be submitted and you would need to explain how that criteria is equivalent to the other criteria.
Okay. Next one is, how does this work for new charters? And I don't know if it's related to the ladder, career ladder, or what part of it. So maybe Cynthia, you can provide us more.
Professional endorsement, I'm going to take a wild guess since it came after. I wonder if it means if when I send out the list for the instructional staff and pupil service staff that meet the criteria, it's going to be who you currently have employed. So if it, let's say someone moved from, I don't know, West Ada School District, and now they're in the new charter school that you're talking about. It's the new charter school that's going to get the list for the recommendation because that's where they're currently employed.
Great, thank you. Next one, how does student achievement work based on students out of school last spring?
I'm going to defer to, I think, Karen, because I believe there was a lot of guidance in that when we were talking about from March into June. about what the student achievement was. And my understanding, and again, if I'm speaking out of turn, that there was still an expectation that student achievement had to be considered. I know what a lot of districts, I believe, has done is they had to go back and maybe change what they chose to use for student achievement, but all of the data that was submitted in the career ladder data submission should have been based on student achievement. Karen, am I speaking out of turn?
I don't have anything to add to that. That's
Okay.
a good explanation. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's see. Sorry, I was scrolling ahead a little bit. Lisa, will we be able to add people to the spreadsheet who may not have met the requirements for the 5th year, but have met it in multiple previous years?
I don't know how they, the law, I have to look at the law. Let's work on that one together. I hate to just give an answer right now off the cuff on that. I believe the law says they have to have met it for advanced professional endorsement. It says they have to have met it in the 5th year because that's the only time that we collected data for the advanced professional endorsement. So whoever asked that question, reach out to me and let's work through a specific individual. Sometimes it's a lot easier to take a look at specific individuals.
Perfect. How quickly will the SDE, SBOE have the reporting ready to show who is eligible to move for fiscal year 2021 for traditional cohorts?
So this is Julie. So again, we're waiting for legislation on this. And I guess I don't know what else to tell you besides that. Just stay tuned. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, this one I think has been answered, but I'm going to ask it again just to clarify. Will the legislature need to take action before movement will be restored to the career ladder?
This is Julie. That is our understanding, yes.
Okay. How are you determining district leadership role, whether we paid leadership premium?
So how we determined that is that was a data request within the career ladder data submission. It was an entry that needed to be made, I believe in, I think you guys were submitting that, I want to say July, August, September of this year. There was an extra time given because we had to start asking for that. And there was a data that I believe said, has this individual had a leadership role in 3 of the previous 5 years? And so that is how we're using it. All of the data that we're using to determine whether or not they met the advanced professional endorsement requirements was submitted in the CLDS system this fall based on 2019-2020. So it should have been submitted in that data.
Okay. How will the process for placing out-of-state teachers work regarding AP placement?
Great question, and I should have thought about answering that. I have currently kept a record of all the professional endorsements that I issued for individuals that applied after July 1st, 2020, because that is in effect when the new law came into place. Anybody that applied for Idaho certification prior to July 1st, 2020 is under the old requirements. And so I have to use that date to determine that. So I have kept a list. I will be adding those individuals to your specific spreadsheets, indicating that they were from out of state. And on page 3 of that guidance document, it includes the documentation that I would needed to make the advanced professional endorsement determination, which is basically 9 or more years out of state. So most likely you already submitted the 3 or more years in order for me to issue the professional endorsement. You're just going to need to go back and look at those individuals and see if they got the 9 or more years. And if they did, then we would give them the advanced professional endorsement once you submit that documentation to me as well.
Thank you. If the district recommends to the SDE, what is the approval process at the SDE for the advanced rung?
The SDE makes no approval determinations at all. Once you give me the yes or no, that data will be combined with what data we had in the career ladder data submission as a recommendation, just like we do with the professional endorsement. And then there will be a computer thing that just checks to make sure that that individual has met all of those requirements. And if they do, the advanced professional endorsement will be issued. I just want to make sure that there's clarity that it's not the SDE approving it or not. It's whether or not that we have the documentation of all of the requirements, and then it will be issued.
Okay. Karen, this one's for you. ESSER 2 funds. If I understood correctly, we are being told to spend the ESSER 1 funds before the ESSER 2 funds. However, we had to complete a plan that had to be approved for ESSER 1 funds. Thus, we may want to change directions with the ESSER 2 funds and add new allowable items that were not included in the ESSER 2 plan. Thus, I then can't spend ESSER 2 funds for new allowable programs until I spend ESSER 1 funds.
Thank you, Michelle. This is Karen. Yes, the ESSER 1 funds must be spent first. There is not any difference between how you spend ESSER 1 and ESSER 2. They both have the same 15 now. It used to be 12, but 15 allowable uses of funds.
Perfect. Okay, and Mark called us on this. I don't think it was answered whether discretionary dollars were being reduced to pay for movement in the if the recommendations were passed.
So the governor's goal, based on my understanding and conversations with his office, is that any changes to the current fiscal year 2021 appropriation have to be revenue neutral. So if we need $51.1 million to allow for movement on the career ladder and the payment of leadership premiums for 21, then we are going to reduce the amount of dollars available for discretionary. So the distribution factor would go down in that scenario. And the same thing for the shifting of the additional cost to fund the full-time equivalent enrollment. That the governor has an estimate of $34.1 million. So in his recommendation, he has also included a reduction in discretionary funds of $34.1 million, which would then further reduce the distribution factor.
Okay, and I think that answers this one as well. Julie, clarify that revenue neutral, so career ladder is offset by discretionary. So our distribution cash flow will not be substantially different.
It's kind of a hard one to answer just because it's going to vary for every single school district and charter school based on what would you have gotten for salary money with movement, without movement, and what would you have gotten for the distribution factor based on your school's support units. Ideally, they offset, but that is not going to be the case for everybody.
Thank you. Did we hear that there is a potential that the steps that were frozen may be given back during this fiscal year, or is it for the fiscal year 21?
So Michelle, could you repeat that one more time? Sorry.
Sure. Did we hear that there is the potential that the steps that were frozen may be given back during this fiscal year, or is it for fiscal year 21?
So we are actually in fiscal year 2021. And so the answer is yes.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, but all right. Let's see. We have a comment. I'm just going to read this one. This webinar has given me so much relief and hope. Thank you so much for doing this for us today. To clarify, the Idaho Rebounds deadline from December has been extended to June 30th, 2021.
That is correct, Michelle.
Okay. Then we have a comment here. Wow, making a mandatory drop in discretionary is brutal. So could ESSER 2 be used to offset funding factor loss?
So I would encourage districts, when you are thinking about how you're going to use your ESSER 1 and your ESSER 2 funds, that you can justify that it's related to COVID, and you can justify how it fits into one of the now 15 uses of funds. When you read number 15, other activities that are necessary to maintain the operation of and continuity of services in local educational agencies and continuing to employ existing staff of the LEA. So do those two things and justify that it is COVID related and it fits under one of the 15 allowable uses of funds.
And just to clarify, that allowable use of funds document is posted on the website that Karen displayed earlier in the presentation on the SRSA page.
Yep. Okay, and I think this is the last one, unless somebody adds something new, and I haven't read all of the other comments, but there are a number. Julie, when you speak of the reduction of discretionary funds, are you speaking of the state's discretionary funds or the school's discretionary funds?
This is Julie. I am speaking of the distribution factor that we will be sending to you for fiscal year 2021. So right now, if it was $27,556, we would multiply that by your support units, and that's the amount you will get for fiscal year 2021 through your foundation dollars that we send to you. How you decide to spend your funds at your district is according to your board approved budget.
Okay. See, I never should have said anything about the last question because now we've got a bunch more.
So,
Is there any?
So Michelle, I think we've about run out of time for questions. Yep. Perhaps you could email that last, if there is a last question, you could email that to us and we will address it. But we sure appreciate all the questions. And again, this helps us so much when we consider the next webinar and what that content will be. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Michelle Perez, for setting this up, and Michelle Taylor for being the commentator.
Oh, you're welcome. Everybody have a good day.